The Joe Rogan Experience.
Now, one of the things that's happened to you that has allowed people to discredit you was there's obviously been some sort of an effort to erase your past.
Yeah.
Some sort of an effort to erase your education history, your employment history at Los Alamos. In fact, the only way your employment history was proven at Los Alamos is someone got a directory of the employees from the past and read into it, and you were on that list. So it proved that you worked there even though people were trying to deny it, and they were trying to use that as a way to discredit you, that you never did work at Los Alamos. You weren't really a scientist. What was that like to experience? I mean, of course, we're talking about the 1980s, the 1990s, when you could get away with something like that.
Yeah, obviously there were a lot less records on computers at that time. It was still file cabinets and folders. But that was frightening. That was one of the first things
what happened?
I think George Knapp was the first one that uncovered that. I mean, he saw my birth certificate disappear.
It disappeared.
Yeah,
like there was no record of you being.
Yeah, there was no record of that. There was
his mom
no
tells
record.
His mom tells me about that. Like it was frightening for her. He's got a real family. You know, he's a real person. It's frightening for her.
But the Los Alamos thing really surprised me. And that they were so adamant that, no, this guy never worked here. Don't be ridiculous. And George went back and forth, for
I got the letters on the wall,
months. I mean, it was ridiculous. But fortunately, somebody came up with a 1982 phone book directory. I mean, and also, originally I told you, when I worked there, I was on the front page of the paper. So they were still able to archive, bring that back from the archives. And, Bob Lazar, a physicist working here at Los Alamos. So there was at least something there. But somehow George came up with the phone directory.
And then Bob took George with cameras into Los Alamos.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So we flew out there and I said, look, come on in. I'll show you where I worked. We'll go in. We'll meet people. And George went with me and filmed
you knew
inside
how to
there.
navigate the place, so you'd obviously been there before.
Met people, and and
Los
so
Alamos
no
was also the place where they had the machine that was able to read the size of your digits.
No, that was in Los Alamos. That was S4.
That was S4. And explain that.
So now this was back in the 80s.
And this is back in the 80s where when you discuss this, people are like, this doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
Okay. What was it?
It was a way, this is before fingerprint scanners and and any high resolution scanner at that time. So what it was a device that had a little picture of a hand on a glass plate with pins in it, so you could jam your hand in there. And there was a bright light above it and a sensor underneath. And when you put your hand in there, the light would turn on, and it would measure the bones in your finger because the light shone through your bones. And apparently, the length of the bones in your fingers are extremely unique and easy to measure. And they use that. When you put your hands on there, the light would turn on and your badge would pop out.
There's it right there.
Oh, there it is. That's it. And I tried to describe this to people, and they said, that is the most ridiculous thing we've ever heard. And I said, hey, my badge came out of that thing. I put my hand on it, badge popped out, and that's how I could open the doors and get into S4. And
and everybody discredited that. They said it was bullshit. It was science fiction. And Jeremy, you found this.
I found it through a good friend of mine named Tyler Rogaway, and he had some good sources inside of Area 52 where they also used these for the stealth program right around that time. So now I've got all these people that worked within who, said only if you're in certain programs would we use this technology. It was kind of shit, actually. They didn't keep it for very long, beginning of biometrics. So I was able to reveal it in my film. I kept my mouth shut until I showed it to Bob. In the movie, it was the first time he saw it was how you see it in the documentary. That's his genuine reaction. I'm getting goosebumps.
That was a great idea, the way you did it.
Thank you, man, because you know what? Guess what? I'm actually trying to see if he's telling the truth. That's how I started. That's how I started. So it was really cool to see that, and that you get to see it, his actual reaction.
Has that been verified by other people?
Yeah, so to me it has. Personally, I get emails every day, and people are telling me where these are used and how they're used, and send me photos. I got a lot of photos of identimats now.
Well, how they were used, right? They're not
how they were used,
but
I don't. The most recent one was way more recent than I thought in another country. But yeah, that technology was used. So what's so funny is that this technology even in the Area 52 where they'd use him for Tonopah, one of the guys who will go on camera with me, he will do an interview with me. He was a technician for one of these. And he hated them because they were really bad. They always broke down and he was a technician for him. Now, he won't tell me where. If he worked at Area 52, so it was probably Tonopah. It's very separated, even on the base, but yeah.
So there was that.
Yeah.
There is your education record. That was also, like, what happened with that?
Well, that disappeared also. That I've never gone anywhere for education. I never attended any classes at Caltech. I never attended anything at MIT.
You did attend classes in those places, though.
I did attend classes in those places.
Do you know anybody that you went to school with?
Yes, I do.
And have they verified that they went to school with you?
Well, I gave Jeremy some names, but the reason I don't say these names publicly is because every single time I mention a name, somebody gets in trouble.
They don't want to be.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. But what is that experience like, seeing your birth certificate erased, seeing your employment history?
Well, it's frightening. It's absolutely frightening.
But it's also the fuel that the debunkers use, the so-called air quote skeptics. I don't like the term skeptics. I'm going to say this publicly because I really have only said this privately. I think it's a sloppy, lazy way to look at things, to just be a skeptic.
Look,
I want people to be objective. And I think there's a lot of things you should be skeptical of. I think you should look at things from a hardline science perspective. You should be objective. But the idea of skeptics, the problem with that is you're always looking for things to be bullshit.
Yeah.
And I think that's dangerous because I think some things aren't bullshit.
It's confirmation bias on the other end. You're just deciding to take a square thing and put it in a round hole no matter what.
And I find a lot of them to be lazy.
Yeah.
A lot of them to be lazy thinkers.
Sure.
Because they're always putting it into that box instead of going, Instead of just separating their ego, they're playing a game. And the game is calling bullshit. I want to call bullshit, and I'm going to line up all these reasons why it's bullshit, and I'm going to ignore anything that might be contrary to that definition.
Yeah, that does
Every
happen.
time I'm thinking I'm going to catch him in something, all along this process, I found Dr. Krangle. He came forward and said, I was in security briefings with Bob Lazar, the physicist at Los Alamos. He went on the record with me. Now, the other people I talked with, why won't they go on the record with me? Because they're still working there. So that's the difference, right? What can the public have, right?
Or even if they're not working there, they want to live their lives. Why? I mean, obviously, people have seen what's happened to you.
Mike Thigpen, after 30 years.
Yeah, really.
I found him.
If you look at all the information on, concerning my accounts, that's verifiable. It can't possibly be a bullshit story anymore. It's really way past that point.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was
Mike Thigpen is. I mean, how could I possibly know?
So Mike Thigpen was the guy that did the security clearances to go to the base. One of the guys that was.
And this
used.
is a guy that you worked with.
He said he did.
Right.
And George Knapp, George didn't believe him. George put him through 4 polygraph tests, right? He tried to see, man, this is a big risk. It sounds interesting, but let's see if he's telling the truth. One of the things was, Bob said there was a guy named Mike Thigpen. He did security clearances for the base, and that's a weird name. It's a very specific. For 30 years, George found this guy in this weird department that he didn't even know it was Mike Thigpen. The guy wouldn't talk to me, ghosted him, totally ghosted him for 30 years. Used Facebook and Google Image Match through his children. I was able to find him after 30 years, and I talked to him 3 times on the phone. He lives on the East Coast. He almost went on camera with me. Confirmed that he did security clearances for the base in 1989, confirmed he remembers Bob Lazar, and what you don't know is there's a handwritten note that a friend of yours has from Mike.
What?
I know, I'm going to give it to you later. But that is real. That is actual. So
A handwritten note that says what?
Like
this is new to me.
So when
they do security clearances, they go through all your friends and family.
And they go to your friends and family, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is to Bob,
wow.
and I had people come to me for a friend of mine that's serving, and they're doing a security clearance for him, and even though I'm like the UFO guy, they did, the FBI will come and visit my house and make sure that they talk about my friend, and they lift a little card. And when my wife told them to get away because she didn't know who they were, they left a little card. It's super cute now. Back then it was a handwritten note, and his friend has it for him that you haven't seen in
oh my God,
2 decades. So if you're listening,
How come
friend,
you're telling me
Well,
this
hold on.
I
now?
don't know why I'm telling
What
this
is
to
this
you.
card?
It's just a little handwritten note with Mike Thigpen's signature.
I mean, a card like a postcard.
Like a piece of paper that he
Okay.
left on the door saying when Bob gets back or whatever it says on it. So it's just another little funny thing. I found the guy, he does the security clearances. He admitted to me he did it, and he admitted to me he was dodging George Knapp because when George said his name on the news, he dropped his fork into his steak or into his potatoes or whatever, and he's looking at his wife. He was in trouble. His name's never supposed to be out there like this. Just a security clearance guy. But you don't want national attention associated with anything Bob has to say. But anyway, this unique name, Bob said, for 30 years, and the guy ghosted George Knapp. George could prove he existed. He actually talked to me, man. He talked to me 3 times. He almost went on camera with me. It's just crazy. What happens after 30 years? You just get more info.